Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Turning Towards Life. This is Lizzie and Justin, and we are here again on another Sunday morning. Both of us are in London, and you are so welcome to be here. And I want to acknowledge all the different places in the world that you're listening from, and all the different locations in those places as well. We hear so many stories of people being in the fields, by the river, in bed, walking, running, in the gym, all kinds of things. And so wherever you are, we want to welcome that place too. And thank you for being here and including us in what we understand is often your routines. We're part of people's rhythms these days. And so some people listen on a Tuesday night in the gym or on their Sunday morning dog walk or something like that. And we're so grateful to be joining you there and grateful to be here and grateful to kind of step into this slightly other world that's quite different for me anyway from my very ordinary domestic life. And suddenly we're in a contemplation of some kind. And today about this beautiful poem that Justin's brought by David Whyte called What to Remember When Waking. And I'm in appreciation of the beautiful kind of contrast that this brings of waking up with young children and all of the kerfuffles that come with that, and then being into this beautiful contemplation and conversation with you, Justin. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Justin, for being here too.
Thanks, Lizzie. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I don't think I've got very much to add, Lizzie, apart from it's wonderful to be with you again. Thank you for making this practice such a big part of your life, as I know it is mine. This is pretty much the longest conversation I've had with anyone anywhere. Here we are still going with many other people alongside us. And for all of those of you who are with us, hello and welcome to this. This conversation is definitely a deeper and realer thing because of your participation in it. And I just want to make a reminder that if you want, we had an excellent experience last week with a source and then a commentary on a source from one member of our wider community, the wonderful Alexandra, opening us up into a whole bigger conversation. So if you would like to join our Facebook group, just search for Turning Towards Life in Facebook. It's a private group, so you have to ask to join. But once you're in, you can be part of the conversation here, and sometimes that then feeds back here into this conversation. So you're very welcome to join us. A couple of other things. You can find the source every week in that Facebook group and on the notes for all the podcast places and on our Turning Towards Life website. And if you feel moved to support us, two ways we can think of. One is head over to turningtowards.life and click on support us. And there are some ways that you can support this endeavor, which takes much commitment and many hours. We'd love to have you alongside us in that way. And if you want to leave us a review on one of the podcast platforms, that also helps people find us, which is a wonderful thing too. So thank you, whether you're doing all of that or whether you're just, Lizzie, whether everyone's just with us, listening and having the conversation go on in their own minds and maybe with other people around. We're going to turn to this week's source. So Lizzie, I have had this on my list to bring for about 5 years of our almost seven that we've been doing. It's never seemed like the week, but this week seemed like the week. It seems very appropriate for a morning conversation. And this is a poem by David Whyte called What to Remember When Waking. In that first hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other, more secret, movable, and frighteningly honest world where everything began, there is a small opening in the new day that closes the moment you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. To become human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To remember the other world in this world is to live in your true inheritance. You are not a troubled guest on this earth. You're not an accident among other accidents. You were invited from another and greater night than the one from which you have just emerged. Now, looking through the slanting light of the morning window toward the mountain presence of everything that can be, what urgency calls you to your one love? What shape waits in the seed of you to grow and spread its branches against the future sky? Is it waiting in the fertile sea, in the trees beyond the house, in the life you can imagine for yourself, in the open and lovely white page on the writing desk?
Thank you, Justin. What to remember when waking? In that first, hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other, more secret, movable, and frighteningly honest world where everything began, there is a small opening into the new day that closes the moment you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. To become human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To remember the other world in this world is to live your true inheritance. You are not a troubled guest on this earth. You are not an accident amid other accidents. You were invited from another and greater night than the one from which you have just emerged. Now, looking through the slanting light of the morning window toward the mountain presence of everything that can be, what urgency calls to your one love? What shape waits in the seeds of you to grow and spread its branches against a future sky? Is it waiting in the fertile sea, in the trees beyond the house, in the life you can imagine for yourself, in the open and lovely white page on the waiting desk?
Lizzie, so I find this poem so moving every time I read it or hear it read. And I think the part that has drawn me to it again and again, the centre part of it, is you're not a troubled guest on this earth. You're not an accident among other accidents. You were invited. And to me, one of the reasons I suppose this poem has been so important in my life, Lizzie, since I first heard it or read it, I think I must be the only... no, that's exactly the opposite of what I want to say. I must not be the only. I know I'm not the only person who struggles with this very central part often. That I'm sure I'm not just speaking for myself when I say it's really easy to forget what a miracle it is that I'm here. But I don't just mean gratitude, gratefulness. I also mean remembering that it matters that I'm here. It's not inconsequential. And I easily, I think, in the grip of my own inner criticism, and when I make myself too small, and when I'm very afraid, all of which are very things that can, states that can easily come upon me, I think sometimes I do feel like an accident among other accidents. And then I notice when I live from there how different my whole orientation to life is from the invitation that David Whyte is making. I caught it myself this morning. I was cycling from home for my swim in the ponds on Hampstead Heath Lizzie, and I could feel. So I'm in the midst of a few things that are really stretching me at the moment. Commitments I'm in the midst of that feel bigger than my capacity, where I feel like I have the sense that I'm often feel like I'm unable to meet the moment in the way that I want to meet it. Um, and I could feel how much tension there was in my body as I cycled. And I realized that what I'd got myself into, which is really easy for me, is a kind of bracing myself against the world. Like, I'm not meant to be here. I don't have I don't belong in this. Somehow I've got to fight it off or get on top of it or disappear under it or something. And then I read David Whyte. It's such a relief. And one of the reliefs is this reminder that runs through the whole poem that we're always something bigger and deeper than the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We're always bigger and deeper than the stories that we have about ourselves. And that many of the ideas we have about how we should respond to that are too small for us to live. That's how I understand that line. So this poem reminds me to breathe myself. We were talking, I think, a little bit about this last week about what happens when we breathe ourselves a little bit bigger. Like when I breathe myself bigger and I can feel my own presence and my own depth, and that there is so much mystery in me and in the world, and that we're made to meet one another. I'm not some stranger to life, really. I feel, and I'm sure there's a word for this, we've talked about in Hopening, your wonderful word that you made. I sort of feel like there's a word that I want to say, which is sort of like returned to contact with my life. And even though the complicated situations I'm in that I don't feel able to do, that are still complex and that I can't figure out, and I've got all kinds of difficult feelings in them, I don't feel alienated from myself or them anymore. I feel more like, oh, I belong in the midst of this. And because I belong, I can bring myself. And in fact, because I know my plans are too small anyway, I ought to make them, but I ought not to get too convinced that they're the whole story.
Yeah. Oh, just receiving all of that, Justin, and feeling into the kind of the dance we're all doing between the worlds, as David calls it, whether that world is the world of before we woke up and the world of waking, or the world of you knowing yourself as welcome versus the world of circumstances and stories and kerfuffles that feel too big or whatever. And the complexity in each of us that has all of that be possible. That one moment we can feel like I belong to this world, and then another moment I'm in this world because of a conversation that I've just had. And I feel like the complexity of each of us is completely extraordinary. And this week, Justin, I've been somehow made really curious about, I feel like I often say these things here, like really basic things, but like what happens when you actually talk to each other about and are in conversation about things that really, really matter. And I often have this experience of I couldn't have known that what is happening between us was possible until we got into this conversation together. Like there's something happens in the in between that is inconceivable until it's happening and happened. And the mystery of that is so huge. And it's like we really are making a world in the conversation. And I feel like that's what this poem invites me into, is the nature of worlds. being made and existing, and somehow language enables us to find them and ferret about in them and know them when we literally didn't know them before at all. So when we become people who can see this possibility in others, like you're saying, that each of us really matters, and then we can be in conversation oriented around each other's mattering. So let's just start with the basic premise. It really matters that you're here, and it really matters that that I'm here. So what's our mattering? How do you matter? How do I matter? And this way that David invites us to wonder whether the seed of me could grow and spread its branches against a future sky. And is that to be found in the fertile sea or the trees? But being in that conversation with one another about the things that don't normally have a place in the world to belong, the secret wonderings I have, the things that keep on happening to me and I can't figure out why. Like what if life was this big invitation? And I need to be in conversation about those little nuggets in order for my mattering to be revealed to me. And this week, I'm feeling that how possible that all is. How possible it is to sit down with one another and to feel into all of the ordinary things and for our mattering to be revealed somehow. And how the miraculousness of language and of listening and wondering and curiosity literally makes new worlds. That's how it feels to me in conversation with others. And then this whole new horizon opens up. And one of the things that comes with that, Justin, for me is get into a conversation with someone and then this big wondering arises. And it often happens here with you and I too, where I think, does anyone even know? Could anyone even know what is going on here, given the particularity of the world that we've built together in the last hour or something, and the conversations we're having about this world that we've made by being curious and talking about possibility and depth and all of that. And it really does feel that mysterious to me, that the quality that arises is like, oh my goodness, we've just built somewhere that you and I know. We know it intimately and we love it. We've just found ourselves in this cave and furnished it in some way, this new opening. And it feels like we just made it. And therefore, if anybody was listening, would they even know what we were talking about? But it's completely coherent to both the people in the conversation and would be coherent if there was a third one present too. It's like what's happening in the moment feels very, very real and yet mysterious all at the same time because it's brand new.
One of the things, there are so many things bubbling up in me as you're talking, Lizzie. But I suppose one of the things that's here for me is uh, marveling at the vastness and the mystery that people are.
Mm.
When you talk about the world that gets made from
Mm.
listening to one another, one of the ways I think about it is it's really pointed to beautifully by this other set of four lines, sort of just beyond the middle of David's poem. To become human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. I'm thinking about even just as you and I sit here talking to one another, that there are worlds within worlds opening within you and worlds within worlds opening within me, this vast depth and mystery that David says we're not accidents, we're not shallow somethings, we're really deep, we matter, it's important. And then there's a world that opens between us because of, I don't know, the combination of all of that as we talk and listen to one another. And it's making me think about how much, for many of us, the the hurry and desperation that we experience in the world, how hard that can make it for us to be in contact with this depth and mystery that we are. And I understand that sometimes, if you're doing difficult work, or if you're raising a family, or if you're trying to have enough resource to keep a roof over your head, or there's all those situations where we feel really in a hurry, and it's completely understandable because we're afraid and there's a lot to do. There's more than we can do than we manage. But than we can manage always. All the work that we have to do that will never be finished. All the things on our desks that will never be done. And because of that, we miss one another. Like the slowing down that we're doing, you and I, in this practice that we do weekly, where we're being unhurried and doing our best to find a way to be in conversation that respects what's going on within each of us, that's always also being echoed and resonating in various ways for everyone who's listening too. There'll be things going on inside us. What I think and feel more and more is how much we benefit from having at least some of our time when we're willing to meet one another and really slow down and take a breath and wonder, who is this here who's in front of me and who am I? And the temptation is to hurry. The temptation is to go the other way, is to not treat you or me as something with depth, but to sort of just treat ourselves as surfaces. Well, I've got things to do and you've got things to do, Lizzie. So let's decide what it is that there is to do and get on with it. And it's not that that's unimportant. It's just that, as David says, what we can plan is too small for us to live. And I more and more have the sense that in order for us to live in this complex, frightening, sometimes world in which we have so little control and so much is uncertain, it really helps us to make contact with the depth and vastness inside me and the depth and vastness inside you, and really pay attention to it. And to be really curious about one another and not to skate over what's happening. We talked about this a little bit last time, about when we ask somebody, well, what's happening now, Lizzie, from all the things that I'm saying to you? That move that's so unusual. Maybe because being human is making ourselves visible, carrying what's hidden as a gift to one another.
That's the line, Justin, that most discombobulates me in this poem. To become human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. And as you read it, then I was feeling into, well, firstly, that I need to read it like 14,000 times to be able to just let it in. Yeah. That's how kind of undoing it feels to me. It feels undoing at the same time as it feels true. And then I make this connection with when we wake in the world in the mornings and we've been asleep, there is this moment of betweenness. Like the way I experience this in my marriage, Justin, which always makes me snigger to myself, is that I wake up and I say to my husband, am I supposed to be cross with you, or are we all right? I can't remember. It's like it has this quality for me of like the slate is clean somehow. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to be cross about, or whether I'm supposed to be doing anything, or whether I have a diary, or sometimes I don't even know whether I have children or not. I mean, really, I wake up and I'm like, so I literally feel like I am coming back from another world to this waking world. And I don't remember like what's on the agenda, or like what I'm supposed to be holding on to from yesterday or not. And so the somehow maybe it's like the originalness of me is revealed to myself. the everything is forgiven part of me, the kind of nothingness, the pure life itselfness or something. So I really love this poem, Justin, and have known and felt this poem for a really long time, and often wonder really hard about this in betweenness on waking. And then for David to invite us into this wondering about, in some way, that being the hiddenness, the for me, the slate cleanness, the pure life itselfness, that being my gift to others, that I carry that. And then that leads also to my true inheritance. That's the thing that makes me like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's what anymore. Oh, what does that even mean? Because it feels really true. And yet I don't know whether I have language for it. But my capacity to know the originalness of me, the goodness of me, the givenness, the essence of me, that is really quite untouched by the world, entirely probably untouched. And that which I make contact with during that in-betweenness of worlds, that being where I might find what's going to grow and spread, and that being what my gift is to you, to carry that hiddenness in relationship with you, about me. All of a sudden, like every piece of curiosity gets born in me. And what on earth is going on there? If I can let that in, like that, let that be true in my experience, that that's what I'm doing, the world all of a sudden feels like a completely different world. And my intentionality shifts, and my understanding of what it is to be human is always like stepping into a whole different story about what it is to be human and to live here and to do what there is to be done somehow.
There's there's a terribly poisonous meta narrative in our wider culture. So you know what I mean by that, Lizzie. A story that is behind all the other stories shapes us. That we are somehow a sort of machine, you know, a product of selfish genes evolving over time, and our love and our consciousness and our care and our feeling, and it is all just some kind of froth on top of an illusion on top of all of that. And it's a very powerful story. I think it's taken a hold on many of us in ways that we don't even realize that that's what's going on. And we treat ourselves like doing machines of one kind or another, and then we treat other people like that too. And it's also a story that brings out a deep sense of meaninglessness as well, which is what on earth is any of this for anyway? You know, if I can't have what I want, and I can't make the world go my way, and there's all these obstacles in my way, including other people. And I wonder whether what you're talking about now, which I also think David's poem points into, which is that moment, if we can catch it, between deep sleep and between full awakeness, when, as you said, we're returned to our originalness, and we find out that we are, I think any words here are going to be a disservice to what, but I have to say something. I think David's done wonderful, wonderful work here. It's like we're pure consciousness or pure being or pure presence, and that's what everyone is and everything is. And then we very quickly we remember ourselves. Oh, I'm Justin, and I'm married to Davina, and I've got children, and I've got work, and I live in a house, and I'm in London, and I'm 54, and I'm, you know, all of that, all of the layers of identity which also matter come back in. But and I'm afraid of this, and I'm longing for this, and I should be angry about this, and it's not that those don't matter, because they do, but it's like the underneath of it, the absolute marvel that we are experiencing beings, and actually all there is in the end is experience. There is the experience of being alive and being with one another and listening to one another.
Yeah.
So really, when we start to get this, it's almost impossible to grasp that. And that to be an experiencing one is also to be filled with possibilities for depth and connection and meaning and contribution and wondering. And so I'm very loving this attention you bring to that little moment, that moment between that we can, when we're waking up. And then, so I'm really coming alongside you. So what would it be to carry our originalness into our lives, our actual, the being, that kind of being that we are, into our lives? And maybe if we remembered it more, we would less fall into that in us which is reactive and destructive. And we talk a lot about goodness, Lizzie, and we both know that people individually and collectively can do unspeakably awful things. And I think that our unspeakable awfulness comes from a kind of forgetting rather than a remembering. Most of the things I've done in my life that I really, really regret, where I hurt someone or hurt myself or didn't take care of something, came from my not remembering, actually. I forgot myself. So both as a sort of kind of honoring and dignifying and sanctifying even the marvelousness of one another, the mystery of one another and ourselves. This invitation is important. But I then think what David says is what you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough. That's our task. It's to find a way to live wholeheartedly, not leaving out. And when we can do that, I think we'll find ourselves bringing ourselves as a gift to others, actually.
And being that presence and conversationalist person who actually brings this to the relationships that we're in. It's just when you said, people do unspeakable, horrible things. It's true. And it's also true that people do unspeakable, wonderful things. And as you say, they come from remembering. And so in the remembrance of that originalness for myself, immediately I can know then that it's not, I can't be different from the next human. Like, that is there for every piece of life. And in my remembering that for myself, and then feeling that and acknowledging that and welcoming that truth of another person, maybe that's what we all need. We need reminding all the time because of the way that other people see us. Some people come to their awakening alone, probably, to realizing that this is true, this originalness, this in-betweenness is true about humans. But I think it's much more often that people remind each other. Something happens where you go, oh my gosh, somebody saw me. This person saw me. And if that's true that they can see that, then what does that mean for my life now? So I think often Justin and I see the year-long program that we run as well, it's like one of the legacies of that is the ultimate kind of paying forward of seenness, where the way people see one another and get seen and then see feels like the real thing that we're doing, really, really, is we're encouraging seenness so that all the humans, we get to feel connected to what we're talking about here, that we get to acknowledge that is us, that is what it is to be human, is to be that in between us and bring that to the world. And how miraculous that David Whyte writes like this. I want to thank him so much for being the one who says these words and is part of that reminder, so that when you and I read this poem and we're like, we don't know what to do with ourselves, it brings out this. this remembrance. I'm so grateful for that remembrance.
Well, and maybe at heart, everything we're up to is about this.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of coaching we do, Lizzie, and the things we teach, and this conversation, this turning towards life, this is what one way of understanding what turning towards life is this kind of remembering. Thank you for. Oh, and I'm really with you. Such a big part of that is what we do with one another relationally. So thank you so much for. I know one of the reasons I do this is not just because of what happens in the world from our sharing this conversation, but because it's a practice in remembering. By being with you and talking and listening in this way, I am remembered again so that I can carry what is hidden as a gift to others, which is what I want to be able to do. So thank you for. I was very grateful to you, Lizzie. I remarking on that we're not just talking to one another, that we're talking to one another and making this public. So thank you for being bold and generous, courageous in the true meaning of the sense, heartfelt, courageous, in making yourself available not just to me and to us, but to everyone because of this, to the world. And thank you everyone for being with us and participating. I'm going to say one more time, we would so love to be in conversation with you. So all the ways I said at the beginning, or email us, Lizzie at, Justin at, hello at, turningtowards.life will reach us. Maybe you've got things you want to say and we'll be so glad to engage with you there or in our Facebook group. And being well, we'll be back again next week.
Bye,
With
everybody.
a source chosen by Lizzie. Bye-bye, everyone.